Bueno, buenos días. Mi nombre es Pilar Martínez y soy del equipo de Juego Responsable de Lotería de la Ciudad. Hoy quiero empezar con esta imagen que forma parte de nuestra campaña, pero que creo que a muchos de nosotros nos va a resultar muy familiar, porque es una joven en su cuarto usando una pantalla y en este caso apostando en línea. Como sabemos, el juego cambió y cada vez se volvió más digital, accesible, instantáneo, masivo. Dejó de ser eso de jugar físicamente con un horario establecido y también con el juego ilegal empezó a ser accesible también para menores de 18 años. Y esto nos obliga a nosotros a avanzar con esta tecnología e implementar mayores medidas de protección para estos jugadores. Es por eso que desde Lotería de la Ciudad no solo regulamos el juego, sino lo que buscamos fue generar un espacio de juego legal, controlado y responsable. Y para eso, nuestro punto de partida fue un estándar de juego responsable online para que las personas que quieran operar en la ciudad de Buenos Aires tengan que cumplir, además de con un estándar técnico, con un estándar de juego responsable, que implica distintas herramientas de protección para el jugador. Bueno, este estándar está formado por 8 módulos y 54 criterios de evaluación. Dentro de esos módulos tienen que cumplir con un programa de juego responsable que tiene que estar alineado con el programa de juego responsable de Lotería de la Ciudad. Tienen que formar a su personal. Hay 2 capacitaciones anuales obligatorias para todas las personas, que es brindada por Lotería de la Ciudad sobre juego patológico y sobre juego responsable. Tienen que contar con distintas herramientas de juego responsable, contar con una publicidad responsable, además evaluar los juegos en función de su nivel de riesgo. Algunos utilizan algunas herramientas como Asterix o Gamban, o algunos utilizaron también la inteligencia artificial para crear sus propias herramientas. Y en función del nivel de riesgo, tienen que implementar distintas herramientas de juego responsable si puntúan muy alto. Bueno, después tiene que estar accesible la autoexclusión, que es 100% en línea, proteger a los menores y destinar recursos a juego responsable. Acá un poco sobre las herramientas. Bueno, tiene que estar disponible la información del juego, las reglas y las probabilidades de ganar. Tiene que haber elementos de concientización de paso de tiempo, tiene que estar el reloj visible y el tiempo de sesión transcurrido. Tienen que poder acceder a la autoevaluación. Tiene que haber información de juego responsable donde estén todas estas herramientas, cuenten de qué se tratan y cómo se utilizan. Tienen que también establecer límites de tiempo y de dinero. Y además tienen que implementar una herramienta de análisis de riesgo de los apostadores. Esto estuvo hablando también ayer Mike. Es importante poder ir midiendo el nivel de riesgo de cada jugador e implementar distintas medidas en función de ese riesgo. Algunas de esas medidas implementadas son, por ejemplo, invitarlo a hacer la autoevaluación, les mandan distintos correos con información sobre las herramientas de juego responsable disponibles, lo invitan a conocer cómo se utilizan estos límites y además, en ciertos casos, cuando el nivel de riesgo es muy alto, pueden llegar a suspenderles la cuenta. También se trabaja mucho con lo que es atención al cliente para poder acercarse a ese jugador. Bueno, tienen que tener acceso a historial de juegos y acá les voy a mostrar brevemente cómo están implementadas estas herramientas en algunas de las plataformas. Como por ejemplo acá es cómo se setea el límite de tiempo y de dinero, que puede ser diario, mensual o semanal, y también límite de gasto o límite de pérdida, y para poder configurar tiempo de sesión. Acá bueno, tiene que estar disponible lo que es salida rápida, que tiene que estar en todos los juegos y lo que te permite es salir de esa sesión de juego por 12 horas. Esto es límite de tiempo fuera, que te permite configurarlo de 24 horas a 6 semanas y se puede configurar también por tipo de juego. Y este es, por ejemplo, un caso que se aplicó a lo que son los juegos tipo slots o tragamonedas online, que como son categorizados como de mayor riesgo, lo que se hace es, antes de iniciar a jugar, te pide que setees límites obligatorios, ya sea de duración de la sesión, límite de gasto y recordatorio de actividad. Bueno, la autoexclusión tiene que estar disponible. Nosotros tenemos un sistema único de registro de autoexclusión en la ciudad de Buenos Aires, y si te autoexcluís en una agencia de juego en línea, te estás autoexcluyendo en todas y también en lo que son las salas físicas. Esto está completamente online y es un sistema que ofrecemos nosotros. Bueno, estos son pequeños mensajes que forman parte de una pequeña interrupción durante el juego, pero tiene que estar disponible en el transcurso de la primera hora por al menos 10 segundos, y lo que invita es a reflexionar sobre cuánto tiempo llevan gastado o cuánto tiempo llevan jugando o cuánto dinero llevan gastado, y te redirige a el estado de cuenta, donde podés ver hace cuánto tiempo estás, qué herramientas utilizaste, cuánto dinero vas perdiendo. Y este también es otro mensaje que te redirige a la autoexclusión, que el juego es para mayores de 18 años, dirige a nuestra página web, está la línea de orientación que tenemos desde Lotería de la ciudad y la leyenda preventiva obligatoria. Todos estos mensajes aparecen en todas las plataformas. Lo que nosotros buscamos es que el cliente tenga la misma experiencia de juego responsable, no importa en qué plataforma esté jugando. Entonces, si es un usuario de multiplataforma, en cualquiera de las plataformas siempre va a encontrar la misma disponibilidad de las herramientas, mencionadas de la misma manera y con el mismo tipo de límites. Bueno, y cuando hablamos de protección también hablamos de menores. En Argentina hay una preocupación muy importante porque con el juego ilegal hay muchos menores jugando. Nosotros lo que aseguramos desde el juego legal es que no pueden ingresar los menores porque tienen que validar con RENAPER, que es el registro único nacional de las personas, y valida la identidad de que la persona que se registró es la persona que dice ser. También hay reconocimientos biométricos que están implementados en distintas fases del registro. Bueno, también hacemos controles y fiscalizaciones de todas estas herramientas. Hay 3 controles anuales obligatorios y además algunas herramientas nosotros las fiscalizamos de manera diaria, como por ejemplo el acceso a la autoexclusión. Bueno, así también denunciamos lo que son los sitios ilegales para poder combatirlos. Acá les traigo, esto forma parte de nuestra campaña actual por el tema de la preocupación de los menores. Lo que buscamos es poner el tema en agenda, que en las familias y cada uno desde nuestro lugar podamos hablar sobre la problemática, pero no solo la problemática de las apuestas en los jóvenes, sino también del consumo que hacemos de las pantallas o de las redes sociales y poder acompañarlos, escucharlos y poner el diálogo en la mesa. No sé si podemos poner play desde acá. Sí.
Martín, ¿llevaste la comida?
Dale.
¿Ensalada comés?
Sí, ensalada está bien.
Bueno, un poco para... Bueno, esta es la campaña que tenemos actualmente y es esto, invitar a apostar por el diálogo y a poner estos temas en agenda de las familias, porque hay mucha preocupación, pero siempre pensamos que no nos va a pasar a nosotros, que pasa en la casa de al lado, y lo importante es hablar para concientizar. Bueno, y ahora la gran pregunta, ¿no? Si funcionan todas estas herramientas. Las encuestas dicen que sí. Nosotros tomamos 2 encuestas, una en 2023 y una en 2025, que generamos nosotros la encuesta, pero fue enviada a través de cada una de las agencias de juego en línea a sus clientes. Lo que pudimos ver es que más usuarios utilizaron estas herramientas con menos barreras de accesos. O sea, aumentó un 2% el uso de las herramientas desde 2023 a 2025. Sin embargo, solo un 48% de los usuarios usan estas herramientas, así que es un desafío para nosotros para seguir trabajando estos años para que más usuarios las usen y las conozcan. Bueno, y no solo las usaron, sino que también las valoraron. Un 81% consideran que estas herramientas son muy efectivas y el 77% notó cambios positivos en sus hábitos. Con respecto a los mensajes de protección, que son estos que les conté que aparecen a cada hora para reflexionar sobre lo que es el tiempo y el dinero que llevan gastando, hubo mayor aceptación, un 45% respeta estos mensajes para su beneficio personal y aumentó un 1,6% de los que dicen que les gusta recibir estos mensajes porque los hacen sentir seguros. También obvio que hay algunos que piensan que les interrumpe el juego, pero bueno, es parte de concientizar al apostador. Bueno, y además de valorarlos, acá podemos ver los cambios que hicieron. Un 35% hizo una pausa o bajó el ritmo en función de esos mensajes y un 6,9% dejó de jugar inmediatamente. Creemos que son unas acciones muy valiosas. Y acá con respecto a la claridad de la información sobre el juego responsable, el 78% considera que la información es clara. Bueno, acá, por si querían ver los gráficos y los resultados, les puse un QR para que puedan escanear. Está el comparado en cada una de las preguntas en lo que fue 2023 y 2025. Y ahora sí, para finalizar, sabía que la presentación podía fallar porque tiene letras específicas, pero bueno. Esto no es solo una certificación, sino que es algo progresivo en el que nosotros vamos acompañando a los operadores. Son 3 niveles de certificación. Hoy en día, por el tiempo transcurrido, la mayoría ya se encuentra en lo que es nivel 3 de certificación. Y lo que vamos haciendo nosotros es acompañando, midiendo estas herramientas. En 2023, en función de los resultados, les dimos una devolución a cada una de las AJLs, porque por más que nosotros hacemos el resultado totalizado, tenemos las respuestas de cada uno de los usuarios, entonces podamos dar devoluciones personalizadas para cada uno de los operadores, y lo que se busca es continuamente seguir midiendo para poder seguir mejorando estas herramientas para poder proteger al apostador. Muchas gracias.
Ok. Agradecemos por compartilhar seu conhecimento conosco, senhorita e senhora Pilar, neste grandioso evento, o seminário aqui em Foz do Iguaçu. Senhoras e senhores, neste momento, chamamos ao palco o senhor Luiz Carlos Barraza, da Brickstein Loteria, nos contar qual é o papel da pesquisa de mercado nos Jogos Responsável. Por gentileza, senhor Luiz Barraza, é isso?
Muchas gracias, buenos días. Bueno, el día de ahora, de una manera muy breve, les quiero contar de 2 temas muy importantes. Uno, que no es nada nuevo, que es la investigación y cómo la investigación es la base de todo proceso efectivo para el juego responsable. Y el segundo, no menos importante, es que no lo tenemos que hacer solos. Hay socios que nos pueden ayudar y que nos pueden acompañar en todos estos procesos. Un poco sobre nosotros, somos Bright Star Lottery, ayer les comentaron un poco, recientemente cambiamos de nombre, éramos IGT, pero como Bright Star, esto no cambia. Seguimos con los mismos procesos, seguimos con la misma cultura y con una misión clara que se reduce en tener jugadores sanos. Jugadores que jueguen de manera sostenida por mucho tiempo. Lo hacemos a través de un código de conducta y de algunas otras herramientas, pero todo está dedicado a buscar a través de nuestros procesos, de nuestras prácticas, el poder priorizar el nivel de juego saludable y sostenido. ¿Por qué es importante la investigación? Creo que hay una frase que me gusta mucho. Muchas veces es mucho más importante la dirección que la velocidad. Y si nosotros no sabemos a través de estos habilitadores hacia dónde vamos y a través de estos socios que nos ayudan a identificar todos los parámetros que debemos aplicar en nuestros procesos, muchas veces podemos apuntar de manera equivocada. Algo importante acá de que yo trabajo desde la parte comercial y siendo inclusive un cliente interno de Bright Star, es que nosotros en todas las prácticas, no únicamente en las prácticas comerciales, sino que también en las prácticas de responsabilidad social, no hacemos únicamente investigaciones de mercado, sino que también investigaciones científicas. ¿Qué es lo que nos interesa a nosotros? Conocer también el comportamiento humano, más allá de la dinámica y el comportamiento del mercado. Algo que queremos reflejar, sabemos de que aquí hay loterías que cuentan con diferentes niveles de certificación dentro de la WLA, pero muy importante que de todos los elementos que refiere el framework de la WLA, el número 1 es la investigación. Y por eso es de que queríamos hacer énfasis en ese tema en específico, porque parte de los beneficios de esta investigación, y creo que todos los conocemos acá, o sea, la prevención del juego problemático, cómo esto hace más eficaces todos los programas de juegos responsables que nosotros realizamos, cómo aumentamos las medidas de protección al jugador, cómo se generan las restricciones de edad y las medidas de protección, pero sobre todo el último, para hacer un énfasis, es que esto es un proceso vivo, eso es una mejora continua. No es algo que nosotros trabajamos un año y lo establecemos y queda, sino que tiene que formar parte de todos los proyectos de nuestro día a día, y por eso les comentaba al principio que dentro de Bright Star es una cultura que se vive. Ahora bien, cuando nosotros buscamos colaboradores o socios, es muy importante que sean colaboradores que entiendan la industria, que entiendan el negocio. Ahora les voy a comentar de algunos socios específicos con los que nosotros trabajamos. En esto importantísimo que no únicamente tenemos que, por eso le llamamos socios, porque tenemos que colaborar con ellos, tenemos que participar en las investigaciones y tienen que conocer íntimamente el negocio en el que nosotros nos desarrollamos. ¿Cuáles son algunos ejemplos de esta investigación? El día de ayer, nuestra colega de Indiana nos comentaba que ella utilizaba el Positive Play Scale o la escala de juego positivo. ¿Qué hace la escala de juego positivo? Que es un socio muy importante para nosotros, que es el doctor Richard Woods, y él inventó esta escala, y es que identifica emociones positivas que se asocian al juego. Y cómo nosotros podemos capitalizar de esas emociones para poder tener campañas dirigidas, mensajes dirigidos que enfaticen ese comportamiento. Entonces, como lo mencionaba ayer nuestra colega de Indiana, y hay muchas otras loterías que ya lo utilizan, entonces, ¿cómo nosotros lo podemos aplicar? Entonces, nuevamente, identificando cuáles son esos mensajes positivos para poder mejorar campañas de comunicación, para desarrollar call to actions dentro de nuestras campañas comerciales, para establecer, en este caso se pone un ejemplo, se establece límite de juego, creo que muchos lo han mencionado por acá. Adicional a esto, también se identificó un segmento específico de jugadores de 18 a 24 años que tienen menos alfabetización con relación al juego responsable. Entonces, ¿cómo dirigimos campañas específicas para este segmento? Eso es otro ejemplo adicional a lo que nos presentaron ayer de parte de la Lotería de Indiana. También está North Star, que es New Jersey Lottery, que lanzó una encuesta, y esto fue una encuesta digital que se trabajó para poder identificar estas emociones positivas y poder readecuar las mismas campañas. Todo esto como prácticas, nosotros colaboramos con ambas loterías como Bright Star y lo empleamos de manera activa. Otro socio potencial es el Centro Internacional de Juego Responsable. Aquí algo importante, porque muchas veces nosotros, y lo más conveniente es tener investigaciones a la medida, pero en el Centro Internacional ya existen muchos estudios donde podemos educarnos, informarnos con relación a buenas prácticas que se han generado con otras loterías que también las han trabajado con otros socios que han podido financiar estos estudios. Ahí hay un ejemplo de algunos de los estudios que se han hecho, cómo se financian este centro internacional. Se hace a través de programas de membresía de la lotería o de nuestro lado de Brightstar, que hemos financiado también algunos programas específicos para mejorar la estrategia de comunicación, para entender el papel de la tecnología que tiene en la dinámica y la interrelación con los jugadores y cómo se puede aprovechar el conocimiento cultural específico para diseñar campañas más efectivas. Esto se ha sido específico de parte de Brightstar, pero así como Brightstar tiene muchos socios que colaboran con la institución para generar estudios robustos que nos ayudan a desarrollar nuestros programas de juego responsable. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que se busca acá? Adicional a que ya dijimos, la investigación es muy importante, tiene que ser parte de una cultura, pero adicional no lo debemos de hacer solos. Y podemos crear una red de expertos y tener este network de conocimiento, de colaboración que nos ayude a tener esa visión externa y esa inteligencia externa para robustecer nuestros procesos. Nosotros somos especialistas en la parte comercial, en desarrollar, en vender, en poder dinamizar el juego y hacerlo atractivo a los jugadores. Pero cómo nos dejamos acompañar con los expertos que nos ayudan a entender mejor cuáles son esas motivaciones, esos usos y esos hábitos de parte de los jugadores para hacer prácticas sostenibles. Porque ¿qué nos interesa? Tener jugadores que jueguen por mucho tiempo, de manera sana. Entonces, en conclusión, empiezo creo que con lo más importante, que es la mejora continua. Nuevamente, esto es parte de una cultura que nos ayuda a nosotros a vivir esto todos los días en cada práctica, cada vez que se evalúa un portafolio de juegos, cada vez que le hacemos una mejora a un juego, cada vez que establecemos un nuevo mercado, cómo tenemos esta mejora continua en las prácticas, cómo nos recertificamos todos los años a nivel, con el nivel 4 de ALEA. Entonces, porque no es algo de que lo hicimos una vez, aquí terminó, sino que es parte de nuestros procesos, de las tareas y de la cultura interna. Lo otro son la certificación, importante porque están los parámetros y los frameworks de la ALEA y de otras organizaciones que nos ayudan a podernos regir y a podernos orientar y entender de que estamos cumpliendo con los parámetros establecidos. Y por último, que estas dos primeras nos brindan la credibilidad ante nuestros clientes y la credibilidad ante nuestros jugadores. Muchas gracias.
Obrigado, senhor Luiz, pela belíssima palestra neste seminário. Senhoras e senhores, agora chamo ao palco o senhor Lee, mão de Singapura e Pulse, para falar sobre IA, detenção de sites ilegais e proteção de auto-excluídos. Por gentileza, senhor, pode chegar mais perto. Agradecemos uma vez mais a todos os participantes deste seminário.
Thank you, everyone. I mean, as I listen to you guys, I'm from so far away, but the problems we have, the opportunities we have are pretty much the same. The same issues that you have are the same ones that we face, and none of us compete. I mean, we certainly don't compete with you. So if there is anything I shared today which you're interested in, I'm more than happy to get into details. So we belong to, we are under the Ministry of Finance, and we are owned by Todd Board, which is a statutory body. And Singapore Pools has got one shareholder. We're a private limited company. We've got one shareholder, which is the Todd Board. Singapore Turf Club has been running races for the last 130 odd years, but we closed races last year. So there are no more local races, but we do offer horse racing. So about half our revenues come from lotteries. So we take in about 10 billion USD in stakes. A GGR is about 3 billion US. Half of it comes from lotteries. 80% of the lotteries are fixed odds. Because the product is fixed odds, we need to make sure that the math behind the models are extremely good. For lotteries, about 25% are placed online, 75% are in shops, literally physical tickets. We don't offer scratch cards, no keno, no draws on demand, fairly traditional. The other half come from sports. Of the sports, I would say about 80% from football, 20% from horse racing. And for football, pretty much all the bets are fixed odds. We don't offer pool betting for football, whereas for horse racing, it is pool betting, it's pari-mutuel. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Asian handicap betting. So Asian handicap betting is a very popular bet type in Asia, where you can buy a quarter ball, half ball, and three-quarter ball. It's a way of placing bets so that you've got almost a 50-50 chance of getting your money back. About 85% of our sports bets comes in online, so that's the general lay of the land. Singapore's got about 6 million people. Let's say about 3 million adults, half of them bet with us. So it's a fairly small market compared to you guys, but in terms of money, it's not trivial. So I've got a few models to go through with you. I'm just devoting a slide each. So if you've got questions, please ask, because it also helps me, because you would be seeing things that we wouldn't be seeing. So any point in time, just shout out, and I'll try and do the best I can. Okay, so these are translations done using LLMs. So if there are mistakes, I do apologize for that. I'm an ex-consultant, so for me, models and frameworks are extremely important. And the way we view the market in Singapore is through the lens of 4 forces. We believe that these 4 forces need to come together for the market to be stable. The first one is what we do as responsible gaming operators, so limits, play breaks, KYC, everything that sort of makes sure that the players are staying safe is the first force. And we do know that it reduces illegal gambling, and we're conscious of that, and we're okay with that. The second is the market that we gain from the illegal operators, so that's the second force. We do have illegal competition, and we try and address that as best as we can. This is good, because our regulators would be extremely upset if they found that we created markets. Always the direction to us is divert, don't create. The third force is social messaging. So we do spend a fair bit of time and money telling people not to gamble. If you've got other uses of your money, please go spread it that way. But if you do want to gamble, if you want to flutter, play with Singapore pools. And the last one is enforcement. We do help the police and others in terms of trying to identify sources of illegal betting. So I'll touch on that as well. Now, when you have a model, when you've got all these agencies coming together, we need to be in a position to measure what is success. And the way we measure this is, we've got 2 measures, just 2. One is what we call the legal coverage ratio, and the other one is the legal incidence ratio. Figure the first measure as your financial market share. How much of the total market in Singapore is being captured by us? But the second metric is probably the more important one. How many people are betting just legal? Because the money part is easy, you can always fix it. It's the people part that is harder. And neither one of these, at least in my experience, can be surveyed and found out. So we do spend a fair bit of time trying to do some math to figure what these ratios are. Now, about 5 years ago, we built a model, and we won an award for this in 2022 from WLA. So we found that there are lots of ways in which people are identified to be problem gamblers. PGSI, for example, it's so easy to break the score of 8 or 9. You just have to answer one question with a score of 2, and all of a sudden you're a bad person. And what we found is that it just doesn't work. So what we did is we use a very different approach. We don't label people as good or bad. We try and see if your behavior deviates. If you're spending $10,000 every month, I don't care. You know, you can afford it, you're good. But suddenly you spend $50,000, I'm worried. And the numbers can be different. You spend $10 a month, I'm okay. But suddenly you spend $60, I get worried. So we built this model, and what we do is we apply a very, very subtle nudge. Very subtle nudge. We don't stop you, we don't ban you. It's a very simple message, which we try and customize to the segment that you belong to. And the results have been phenomenal. So every time we nudge somebody with a red zone message, their spend goes down 40%. Look, we do lose revenues because of these nudges, and we fully acknowledge that. We did an A/B test, and the p-values were extremely low, so it works perfectly well. We don't find people going back to the danger zone that often. So about 5% or less actually are repeat nudge recipients. And the behavior does not normalize for people who spend a whole lot of money. And 75% of the customers we surveyed said that, yes, these nudges do work. So again, it's not about labeling. It's not about calling people good or bad. It's just that little tiny nudge. The other thing, look, I'm going to change. Think of this as a sampling menu. So I'm going to touch on a few things. Whichever interests you, I can spend more time over the next today and tomorrow. The other thing that we need to think about is how we design our product. So Andreas yesterday spoke about Texas lotteries, the way the game is designed, how people could play around with it. It snowballed, I believe, about 85, 90 times before the pot of money got to be that big that somebody could do the math and take it out. In pools, after the fourth draw, we don't snowball, we cascade it. So there are very subtle things that you can do in your product design, especially if it's fixed odds, or at least parts of it is fixed odds, that can minimize things of this nature. So we did a fair bit of math. If anyone's interested, it uses conic programming. You can access the paper here if you're interested. It's a little bit heavy on math, but it's quite an interesting read. The other thing that we found, and this is just a very simple example, the other thing we found, it's very hard to treat our customers the same. They differ substantially, and this particular thing, so I'm just comparing sports punters and lottery punters, and this, if you're in this particular quadrant, that means that you've got a fixed wallet. You spend the same amount every month, every week. But you're kind of constant in the kind of money that you spend. So if anyone's interested, the two measures that you use are relative mean, absolute deviation. And this is just a simple illustration to say that we cannot treat our customers all the same. We need to do a fair bit of detailed segmentation to do that. We don't use k-means. We used to use k-means. If you're familiar with it, it's a hard cluster. We don't do that anymore. We do Gaussian mixture model, so it's a soft cluster. You can belong to two segments at the same time. You can belong to three. It depends on whether Euro is on or not, or World Cup is on or not, or if your team is playing or not. So you can belong to multiple segments at the same time. So we've got about 8 segments, and we make sure that every time we communicate with them, it's very specific in the way that we talk to them. I did speak about the third FOZ, which is reducing gambling overall. So this is for Women's Euro League, and we had to run 2 different campaigns. The one here caters to women who are predominantly lottery punters, which is why you see those numbers big and bold. And we do A/B testing to see how many people are interested in these. And then these are people who are actually sports punters and women. For them, they're more interested in the fixtures. I mean, they want details about the game and who's playing when and where. The others are more in terms of lottery, so they just want a multiple bet for sports. These are just some safer play messages, but again, segmented. The fourth force, now I'm just moving on. So one of the bigger problems for us is illegal gambling. And every time we go to the regulator, the question is, how big is this issue? So what we did is we built a tool. The tool is called sitesentinel.ai. We've hidden it, so you can't search for it. But you can type it in, it'll take you there. It did cost us a fair bit of money to build it. So what it does is it crawls the internet, looks for any site that talks about gambling. It runs through two models. It takes an image, it takes raw text. So we've got two internally trained models for image as well as text. It then classifies every site it sees into either a gambling site, an affiliate site, or a non-gambling site. So it's very easy for search, engines like this to get confused with an ESPN because it sees a whole lot of sports data and sports information. It thinks it's some sort of betting marketing site. But we do have a fairly good engine that does this. Now, affiliate sites are dangerous, more dangerous than gambling sites because these are sites that funnel your customers to illegal operators. They will pretend to be ones that give you sports information. They'll tell you things like tips, and they get paid 10% to 50% of a year's GGR. So it's a fairly healthy chunk of change for them. We supplement the data with people like SEMrush and SimilarWeb. We've got internal analysis in terms of some of these things. We do IP lookup and domain lookup and registry lookup and things of that sorts. We also try and look up internal architectures to see what sort of sports betting architectures these guys have on the inside. I've got a short video that sort of shows you what this engine looks like. If I can get it to play. Oops, sorry. Could you guys help me with this, please? Thank you. I think the graphic is terrible. So what it does is it gives us numbers of sites. It tells us who are the demographics of people who are visiting these sites. It tells us what promotions they're running. It tells us what products are being advertised. And this tool crawls the internet once a month. It's fairly compute intensive, so we just run it once a month. We've got friends and partners from Asia who use this tool. More than happy to share with anyone. It's not optimized for South America, though. We're extremely good with English and Chinese. We haven't brought in any of the other languages as yet. Okay, so this is probably the last bit I have. Now, the second question that the regulators ask us is, look, you've told us there are so many sites, you've told us all the promotions. How big is the market? And we've struggled with this question forever. And some time ago, we decided that doing surveys probably was not the best way. For two reasons. One, you're literally asking people to commit and say that I'm doing something illegal, one, and two, I'm spending so much of money doing illegal things. And in a place like Singapore, it just doesn't work. People wouldn't be honest in the way they sort of respond. So we tried lots of things. We tried asking them, how much do you bet? How much do you fund? How much do you lose? How much do you win? We've tried it 7 ways a Sunday. It just doesn't add too much value. So what we did is we built a a neural network model. It's a very shallow neural network. It's what we would call a multi-layer perceptron. It's just few layers deep. We take in internal projections. We take in revenue data. We take in a bunch of economic variables from World Bank. We look at historic financials. We take data from IMF. Now, I don't know if you guys have looked at this, but if you were to look at your gambling losses as a proportion of your GDP, when we look at it, for most countries, the value holds fairly constant. So there's a whole bunch of math that goes in here. We run it through 3 different networks, and finally we get a predicted value for sports and lotteries. Now, one of the best things this for us, so I remember the gentleman from IGT who spoke before me spoke about directionality. And if you do a survey, it's very hard to get directionality because you're always looking in the past. I spend this much. It doesn't say how much would you spend. Whereas if you've got a mathematical model, I can look forward 3 years, 5 years, and say this is what the potential size of the market could be. Thankfully, WLA was helpful again. They featured us in one of the articles. It's still up on the WLA website. You guys can look it up. And that is pretty much all I have. Oh, you want me to go back? That's the article. And that is us. I mean, it's not me, it's the whole team, so somebody can pick it up. But I'm happy to take questions and, more importantly, suggestions. If any of you think that the 5, 6 things that I said can be made better by doing something subtly different, or something which you guys have tried, have worked, hasn't worked, more than happy to listen. I mean, I traveled a long way. I would love some inputs from you guys in terms of how to do things better. Okay, guess not. Look, thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sr. Lee. Ok. Senhoras e senhores, agradecemos a todos pela presença. E agora, na sequência, teremos a apresentação do Sr. Mike Randall, da GLI, que trará reflexão importante sobre os riscos e também as recompensas da tecnologia do jogo responsável. Por gentileza. Aqui.
Thank you. Bom dia. So this morning's been really interesting. This is a rapid state of change in our industry. And what I'd like to do in the time that I have is to really try to put some thinking around all of what we've heard this morning about technology, and in particular, the introduction and the usage of artificial intelligence. And I want to talk about the opportunities and some of the benefits, some of the concerns, and some of those things that we need to think about in a thoughtful way, and then maybe some thoughts for each of you moving forward. You know, we are really undergoing profound change with gaming, and particularly here in South America. New laws and regulatory models emerging from here in Brazil, Peru, Colombia. Latin America is becoming really a reference point for responsible gambling, and the rest of the world is looking here on how we can enhance responsible gambling through smart and adaptive technology. And AI Hello. Oh, there we go. AI is revolutionizing our field. Today already, we're seeing being used in the world real-time behavioral analytics, dynamic intervention systems, and Liman talked a little bit about those little nudges this morning. We're witnessing the emergence of tools that empower players, challenge the idea of traditional oversight that we've had for many years. But these innovations, in the wrong hands, also introduce serious risk. There can be a lack of transparency. There can be data misuse. There can be over-reliance on automation. So, you know, when we look at the benefits, when we look at the things that technology can bring this industry, we have AI systems that can monitor individual play minute by minute. They can now detect risk signals like spikes in bets or extended sessions. As Limon said, they're not so interested in the regular spend, but if it increases by a multiple of 4 or 5 or 6, what's happening? And maybe that's something that we really need to intervene or nudge or inquire about. We're looking at tools that can generate immediate responses to these shifts in play. And remember what I talked about yesterday. When we look at risk, when we look at issues around problem gambling, it's a dynamic, moving parts. And today, I may not be at risk, but tomorrow, because something happens, I could be. We're also seeing self-exclusion being modernized by biometric tools, and operators and regulators now have real-time access to dashboards that are real-time activity, and it's helping them guide smarter decisions and implement better regulation. But there's also risk. And these tools can cause harm if they're not used in the right way. Hyper-targeted marketing campaigns risk exploiting vulnerable players. Algorithms that are unexplainable, we call it black boxes, means that we don't know why it triggered an alert. And the inability to understand the why really can cause harm in the way that we interact with players. And data privacy, throughout all of this conversation, data privacy continues to be a real concern, and how do we address that? And automation, if poorly managed, can actually reinforce harmful behaviors rather than prevent them. We're seeing innovation across the region. You know, we're seeing here in Latin America progress in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Peru. We're seeing AI-driven monitoring. We're seeing real-time tracking. We're seeing session limits. We're seeing integrated exclusion options, and these tools are demonstrating a couple of things. Obviously, how technology can benefit this industry, but we're also seeing how we can implement local solutions and regional and cultural differences and tailoring them to regional realities and ensuring that we can customize based on where we are and the residents and the players within each of these jurisdictions. And we're seeing, things that happen around the world, and because of that, the legal landscape is shifting rapidly. New laws in Peru are mandating RG messaging and self-exclusion. In Colombia, they require RG tools online. Here in Brazil, the new detailed RG framework has really set a standard on how we're going to protect players. So the challenge is no longer legislation, but it's the consistent enforcement and customization. And across the continent, countries are exploring these advanced approaches and tools inspired by neuroscience, risk detection via gameplay behavior, and Limon talked about that, are emerging. Regulatory reforms, calling for third-party risk assessments. We're really laying the groundwork for the most exciting time this industry's seen, and the integration of AI. And some of the systems in other parts of the world really are helping us understand and laying some lessons for us. We've seen systems that are being used in North America that are tracking those deposit spikes. Limon talked about that. The play frequency, the session duration, and these systems are now building player risk profiles and individual player risk profiles. So as I talked about yesterday around game design, having these player risk profiles allows us to have real conversations with each individual player. And what's important in all of this is the explainable AI. And what do I mean by that? It's allowing our frontline staff, allowing those people who are monitoring player behavior to understand why and when we flag a player's behavior. And this is going to improve trust and effectiveness of intervention. If we can't explain it, or if we don't understand why they were flagged, it's not going to allow us to provide the right supports and the right kind of help. So these are one of the things that we really need to consider as we're moving forward. There's another system being used in the world that uses real-time AI monitoring to detect risky patterns in an early stage, and it automatically initiates interventions, a session pause, or a deposit limit prompt, those little nudges that say, hey, did you want to do that? Did you mean to do that? Did you know that this has been your play behavior over the last days, weeks, and months? So this shift from reactive to preventative RG is what many in this industry are striving for. And again, it's as long as it's properly managed, as long as it's good intentions, I think we could revolutionize this industry, and this could be one of the most dramatic times of change that we've ever seen. There was a study in 2024 just completed in Canada, the UK, and Spain, and it found that behavioral data, like repeated self-exclusion, frequent deposits, predicted problem gambling more accurately than just monetary data alone. And it really does support the use of AI behavioral analysis. But we need to consider certain things. And so this just shows a quick overview of the different ways that we can measure predictive analysis and use an AI to better determine pathological gambling or issues or challenges. And we're starting to see, as I said, AI being used in Brazil, Peru, and Colombia, and Spain, and some of the things that it's being used for, and real-time detection, session limits, using neuroscience to detect behavioral play. And we're also seeing AI that we can localize and adopt technology for cultural local context, and ensuring that the systems decisions are reviewed and analyzed by humans to ensure we understand why the system has flagged a player. We also, I think, can use AI to set better regulation, to better monitor in real time. But at the end of this, and I guess here's the other side that I would challenge the industry, is as we rush towards the implementation of AI, we need to use ethics to guide our pathway. Ethics have to guide us. Technology needs to be localized, it needs to be aligned to the cultural behaviors, it should be explainable and auditable. Third, any system that we use should meet each of the region's evolving legal standards. The regulatory environment in Brazil is different than in Argentina, different in Colombia, different in Peru, and we should be able to adapt to each of these regional differences. And finally, human oversight is essential. We can't automate empathy or accountability today. Please remember that. We cannot today use AI to automate empathy and accountability, and that's such a big part of the value of this industry. So some recommendations as we move forward in terms of implementation. And we work with, at GLI, we're working with clients around the world. I just finished doing some training in Uganda, and one of the big topics of conversation was, how do we integrate AI? How do we use AI to improve the way we monitor? And it's an exciting opportunity, but it needs to be handled with care. We need to select tools that are tailored to our player needs and to the regulatory frameworks that exist within each of the jurisdictions. We must have transparency in every decision made, and we need to be able to explain why the system made those decisions, why the system flagged those players, and to be able to audit that. We need to train human teams to act on AI insights. So it is a great monitoring opportunity, a great monitoring tool, but they still need a human team to bring that empathy, to ensure that we have human oversight. And we need to continuously evaluate the tool's performance, not just usage, but how effective are these tools in actually reducing harm? One of the things we now know is that AI-powered RG tools are being used in 37 countries in the world today, and it's growing every day. Here in Latin America, you're not lagging behind, you're innovating. You are leaders moving forward. Some of the predictive models that are behavior-based are more accurate and more ethical than any human intervention, but it requires the human oversight. And finally, regulation is maturing. The task now is how do we regionally customize, how do we better enforce, and how do we learn from each other? In all the work that we've done, there really is 3 consistent questions, and this is what I'll leave you with today, some of our thoughts and how we've been working with operators, regulators, and suppliers around the world. And the first is, how can we balance protection with positive user experience? Limon talked about these non-intrusive nudges or these tiered responses to engage without alienating players. I think that's an excellent example and one of the things that operators need to consider when they're using AI. We need personalized support. You know, I talked yesterday around game design and that every player has a different set of values. Every player is different in the way they think and the way they act. And we need personalized support, tailored messages that reflect the right tone, the right preferences, the right channel. While SMS might work in Brazil, it might be better to use email somewhere else. And we need to understand players, their preferences, and I think through that we can have personalized, customized support that really produces better results. We need transparent communication. We need to inform players why an action is taken. So if AI flags me for a reason, why is that? We need to educate our players. We need to inform them, and we need to do it in a non-intrusive and a non-judging way. And we need to, Pilar from Lotba talked this morning about the opt-in, opt-out, and today we all have regulated tools for responsible gambling, time limits, wage limits, but they're opt-in, and in most jurisdictions we see less than 5% of players are using these tools today. So one of the other considerations is let's make it an opt-out, not an opt-in. Make it part of the onboarding. Make it part of the registration. Set up and allow players to set these limits. In a time of crisis, it's going to be a much better safety net than not having it. Another question is how can regulators best oversee AI-driven responsible gambling tools? Well, first and foremost, I think regulators need to mandate explainability. They need to require that AI tools provide clear, human-readable reasons for triggering interventions. This supports the idea of fair audit and fair enforcement. Regulators need to standardize KPIs. They should establish performance metrics, like flagging accuracy. How accurate was the AI in flagging an issue? The player outreach efficacy, and the self-exclusion follow-through. We need to benchmark operator compliance with the use of these tools. We need to enforce transparency laws and require the disclosure that AI is being used. And we need to prohibit manipulative personalization. There's so much information that AI could have in the wrong hands. It could take advantage of vulnerable players quite literally on a daily and hourly basis. And we need third-party audits. I think regulators need to implement a mandated independent verification of RG systems that are using AI, and these audits need to happen on an annual basis. And then the final question is, what are the hurdles today to implementing AI, and why can't the entire industry rush to implementation? One of the issues is that every jurisdiction has different regulations. And so AI tool standardization becomes really challenging. And so we need to build that into the evolution and to the development, because we can't abandon regional differences and cultural differences, and we need to figure out how to build those into the tool development. Data access and infrastructure. One of the real challenges in a multi-operator environment is that monitoring of player behavior over 50 sites, 100 sites, 200 sites becomes really challenging. And so how do we better monitor real behavior? Imagine if we asked every operator to track in real time a player's behavior, and individually on each site, they may not appear to have any abnormalities at all, but they might be on 50 of those sites or 100 of those sites. And how do we collectively gather data? And so we need to think about that and following the player wherever they are, not just their behavior on individual sites. We need cultural sensitivity. What works in Brazil doesn't necessarily work in Peru or Panama. And then one of the other concerns is technical capacity. When you think about smaller operators, or you think about government, state-run lotteries, they may lack the expertise or the money to be able to implement some of these tools, which could create an inconsistency region by region. So those are some of the challenges we need to think about, that we need to overcome. But at the end of the day, it's an exciting time, and AI in the right hands really could be one of the most dramatic and impactful changes we bring into this industry. For the first time, we could have real-time data, real-time conversations, and real-time support for every individual player. And the ability to monitor that, to explain that, and to support that could make sure that a regulated industry is heralded and celebrated around the world as an innovator and somebody who is really committed to harm minimization. And in the right hands, AI can be one of the biggest advancements this industry has ever seen. But we need to do it cautiously, we need to do it ethically, and we need to make sure that human oversight and intervention continues to be part of that. So thank you very much.